Hello and a warm welcome to Viewer Exclusive. This program is packaged exclusively for you. Now, the government of today seems to be too out of reach and out of touch of the plight of her citizens. Now, there's a reason we have the three arms of government and the three tiers of government. Today, our focus is on the grassroots governance and how you can begin to hold your government accountable to good governance. My name is Chinon Tupam, and I'll be speaking with an expert right after the break. Thanks for staying with us. This is Viewer Exclusive, and like I promised you, I'm being joined live in the studio with Dr. Victor. He is a development expert, a member of the Nigerian Institute of Chartered Arbitrators. I got that right.
Yeah.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now let's go straight into the matter of today. Grassroots governance is one part of governance that Nigerians seem to ignore, right? We just see during election times, you see one uncle, one auntie, or somebody there coming out and the person is running for office. But a lot of us, after those periods, we don't seem to feel their impact any longer. I would like to start by asking you what the function of the local government as a tier of the government is in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. And a timely topic indeed. What a time for us to look at the roles of grassroots, the local people in the governance and the public administration of their society. So, talking about the local government systems, perhaps the first question should be about the rationale for creating the local government in Nigeria. You recall that prior to the existence of local government in 1976, the colonial masters used what they called the native authority system. So through those native authority systems, they had, where they used the local chiefs, where they used some existing structures within the community to administer people at the grassroots. But in 1976, during the military era of Olusegun Obasanjo, there was a need to reform the local government system, whereby today we have what we call the local government as the third tier of government. And why do we have the local government as the third tier of government? It's because there is a need for the government to be brought close to the people at the grassroots. The federal government as it is, it seems a little bit very far from the common man. The state governments are not able to discharge some responsibilities of the people or that will satisfy the yearnings and aspirations of the people at the grassroots. Remember, in a federal structure like the one we're operating in Nigeria, Section 55 of the Constitution actually brought out what they call the exclusive list. Outside the exclusive list, we have the concurrent list and you have the residual list. Now, when you look at those items under the residual list, you see some tasks that they don't seem big, but these are very important things for the people at the grassroots. Talking about the construction of culverts, talking about maintenance of cemeteries and what have you. And these are things that will matter most in quote to the people that you have at the grassroots. And that is actually the rationale why you need to have another tier of government that will be close to the people at the grassroots, that will be accessible to the people at the grassroots, that the representative of that tier will be closer to the people, number one, will be approachable to the people, number two, and they will always be accessible These are very important concepts that we are talking about. So because when you don't have representatives that are accessible to the people at the grassroots, you create a system where there is a disconnect between the government at the center and the people at the grassroots. And what is the essence of government? The essence of government is to actually provide services, is to be able to provide the good, to deliver the goods to the people. And where the government is not able to provide those goods, then you subvert that social contract that exists between the rulers and the ruled. And that is actually the essence of government as well. Yeah.
Okay, so well, we're going to talk extensively on accessibility because that's where I want our focus to be, how people can actually reach to their government at that level. One of the functions that I have seen for the local governments, one of their major functions is to provide economic advice or economic suggestion to the state government. So in essence, the local government reports to the state government. Do we see that? And the state government, are they readily giving ears to the local governments that do this?
Thank you. Theoretically speaking, you have the setup of the government is supposed to be more like a computer system. Okay. A computer system in the sense that you should have something that provides the input, you should have a processing device, and you should have the output. Now, when you talk about the input, here you are talking about the people that you are talking about, whereby they need to provide the demands, they need to provide the aspirations, the complaints, the feedback, whatsoever thing that they feel that these are our felt needs, these are our priorities, these are the things that we need to make life better and easier for us. Now, these things are supposed to be organized in such a way that it is passed through those representatives that you talked about, especially at the local level. And when they pass that, this is supposed to be passed to the CPU, the central processing unit. I'm just using the computer as an analogy now. Now, you pass it through the CPU, it's supposed to be processed. And that is where the relevant stakeholders, the local government, the state government, and whichever agency that is supposed to be concerned in processing all those demands of the people, and then you provide that in form of an output. And what are those output? Service delivery. What are those output? Infrastructural development, economic development, all of those things that that can make life easy, that can make life meaningful, and that can make life better for the people at the grassroots.
All right, let's break this down to what a layman, anybody watching us now, can understand. Accessibility to the government of the day now. I sit down at home and something comes up, security case, things like that, and I need to meet somebody in the government. I need the government to hear this. How do I go about that?
Fine. Under normal circumstances, before I will break it down to what you call what the layman can understand. Under normal circumstances, there are supposed to be systems that can be able to take those kind of complaints, those kind of yearnings, the people. There are supposed to be what the private sector will now call the customer service unit, where you have a complaint. When you go to banks, there is a unit or there is a personnel that is employed, saddled with the responsibility of listening to whatsoever complaints that you have, no matter how bad, no matter how unpalatable it is, you go and voice out your complaint. The government system is supposed to operate like that. You are supposed, in each government agency, in each government parastatal, you are supposed to have a body, you are supposed to have a personnel, you are supposed to have a unit whose responsibility is to listen to the demands of the people. And when people actually voice out their demands through whatsoever means, maybe verbally, maybe in written, maybe through their cultural group, social group, or any kind of association, that they are able to come together, maybe in a pressure group form, and they present their demands. The government is supposed to take those demands seriously. And by taking those demands seriously, these are supposed to serve as the basis for any kind of public policy that we are supposed to initiate in the society. In developed climes, public policies do not just happen in big cities. Like in Abuja, you just sit down and you say you want to do a poverty alleviation program, and you just assume that these are the needs of the people at the grassroots, and you start saying, okay, after a seminar, you take your bottled water and you start dishing out policies. No, you're supposed to actually dish down or trickle down those kind of nets to listen. What are these people, or what are the felt needs of the people? It's just like, permit me to digress a little bit. It's just like some of the activities of the non-governmental organizations. An NGO goes to the grassroots to provide some kinds of services. There is no needs assessment. There is no system that is able to ask the people what are your priorities at the moment. But you sit down in New York, you sit down in whatsoever big cities that you have, and you just assume that, okay, we are going to community A and we are giving them water supply. But did you really go there to check if maybe they have bigger problems than water? I'm not saying water is not a problem, but there are the economics will call some things scale of preference. There are some things that will actually assume a more priority at a moment than some other things. So the same thing with the government. You cannot continue to assume on behalf of the people. In fact, from my experience, I will tell you that most of the people that initiate some of these policies for the government have little or no understanding of what the real needs of the common man is. And you know, when they sit down, like I said, in big cities and they make this kind of assumptions, the policy framework or the policy implementation has a lot of implementation issues. Why? Because in the first place, the conception part was not properly done. The people were not consulted. It was not done in a participatory and consultative manner. And that is the reason why the accessibility question that you talked about, people feel they are not involved. People feel they are not, the opposite of political participation, you say, is political passivity, where people become passive in political issues that relate to their societies. So there is need to be structures in place that allows people to voice out their demands. There need to be systems in place that allows people to articulate their own demands according to what they feel is their own priority, and government need to process that and provide it back to the people in form of output.
Okay, from what you've just said now, let me ask a question. Is it possible for us to begin to see policies, right? Policies in, say, local governments, or policies like pockets of policies in Nigeria, say in local government, as it suits these people, as it suits these people? Wouldn't it begin to be seen as these people are beginning to form their own colony or something, or would that work?
Yes, the whole idea of public policy or any kind of policy that you want to initiate is to actually address a need. Any policy that do not have the potency to address a need, it's not supposed to be called a policy. That is maybe just a decision or whatsoever word that I can call. Now, it's a big mistake, and it happens mostly in developing countries like ours, whereby blanket approach is normally used to make a policy. Blanket approach is normally used to cascade development. For example, let me give you this example, the issue of power supply. We struggle a lot with issues of power supply in Nigeria. And I will tell you that in most climes, power supply is not normally provided to the people using this kind of blanket approach and say, okay, you have a national grid and you supply and what have you. You look at what is peculiar to a particular society or to a particular community and see to what extent can you be able to harness the natural resources and translate them to power supply. You go to the northeast, for example, Adamawa, Gombe, Borno. These are areas where you can be able to tap into the natural resources of the sunlight and translate them into energy. When you go to the southwestern part of the country, you will see that, in fact, there is a large basin of water, marine, whereby you can be able to extort. So what I'm trying to say is that this can also happen even in terms of policy initiation and implementation. Look at this community. What is the need that these people are having? And design a policy that can address that particular need. Instead of just sitting down as a central government and you just do one policy and you are implementing it to all the 774 local governments in Nigeria without necessarily taking into cognizance that what society A needs may be different from what society B needs.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Well, we'll come back to you and discuss more. We're still in conversation with Dr. David. Let's take a quick break, and viewer exclusive, we'll be right back. You're still watching Viewer Exclusive on Viewer Television. I'm still in conversation with Dr. Victor, who is giving us insights on how you can hold the government of the day accountable to good governance. Now, before we went on a break, you were talking to us about policies. Let's ask directly now. You're talking to the government. What kind of policies should we begin to see stemming out from, like, segmented policies that we say that can push us to where we ought to be as a nation?
Okay, thank you. Instead of me trying to present some policy suggestions to the government, I would rather propose a change in methodology of how policies are initiated.
Okay.
Just like I started by saying, policies are supposed to be designed to address the peculiar needs of each community. I will suggest that before any kind of policy is made, the people should be consulted. I will suggest that for any kind of policy to be initiated for a society, there is supposed to be a proper needs assessment. There is supposed to be a proper framework where the people are actually consulted.
How can these people be consulted?
Fine.
How can they be accessed? How can they be consulted? Because like we said, they seem to be so far away from us. We hear this, your local government chairman, he's there, he comes only when allocation has come, and he's not seen again till next month. So how do we see them? How do we hold them accountable and say, okay, guys, we need to see you. This local government has these needs and this and that, and then we need to see you. How do we do that?
Now, unfortunately, we have all of these systems. We have all the framework in place. Only that the sincerity of implementation is not always there. What do I mean? If you say, how do we see them? How do you get your local government chairman? How do you get your councillors? How do the state governors select their commissioners? I see that they select their commissioners. One of the criteria is they intend to give representation to each local government. How does the president get the ministers? How do we get the legislature, the members of House of Assembly, members of House of Representatives, the senators? How do we, all of these things mostly come out, are extracted from the local people. But like I said, in actual practice, are they truly the representative of the people? That is where the question is. But if it is in terms of the system framework, is already there. We have systems whereby we insist, governors will insist that, okay, I want each commissioner to come from each local government and what have you. And what is the theoretical assumption? Is to provide a sense of belonging to each community. For everyone to feel that, okay, we have this person that is, but the big gap mostly happen when those people get appointed, they completely disconnect themselves from where they came from. And that is why you are there to represent the people, but the people cannot see you until after 4 years when you are back to start seeking re-election. And if it is in terms of platforms, if it is in terms of, forums where people can be able to be accessed, for crying out loud, we have so many avenues where these people can be reached. During electioneering period, we see that they organize a lot of campaigns, they organize town halls, all of those things. But these are things that are not supposed to happen only during political seasons.
So that's the question. How do we get this to continue to happen?
So the sustainability of some of these things beyond the electioneering period is where the issue is.
That's where the issue is.
If, even though you say we will talk about the legislature separately, but if each arm of government can be able to take their constituency, I don't want to call it constituency project so that maybe the legislature will not feel I'm talking about them completely. But if they will begin to take this kind of, constituency focus more seriously, whereby all effort before you initiate any kind of policy, if I have a legislature in Abuja, if I have a legislature in the state capital as a member of the House of Assembly, how often do they go back to their local people and ask them?
That's the thing.
I have a sitting on Tuesday. I want to move a motion on this. How does this, or how do you feel about, or how does this fit into our immediate need? Or the people will say, okay, we need this, we need that, and you'll be able to articulate that so that when you stand to say, I represent the good people of this, you are not actually lying. You are actually saying the truth, that you truly represent them. But in the actual practice, most of these things happen on the level of semantics. They like the words, they like the way the sentences are arranged, and when they stand up to talk, they just talk with a lot of hypocrisy.
And not actually speaking the heart of
exactly.
the minds of the people.
You say you represent the good people of this community. But in the actual sense, are you truly a representative? Did you consult them? Do you always hear them? I don't even want to talk about the legitimacy of how they even got there. That is a subject for another day. But now that you are there by hook or by crook, do you normally go back to them and hear them and have systems whereby you can be able to sit down with them? And by sitting down with them, there can be two forms to it. There can be formal engagement and there can be informal engagement. Formal engagement are the things I have talked about. Those, town hall meetings, constituency meetings, and what have you. Informal engagement. Go to those places where they sit to, have their tea in the evening. You are their representative. You are not supposed to feel that maybe now you are of higher class and you cannot sit down on their mat and have interactions with them. So when you sit down there in the course of those kind of informal conversations, you pick out a lot of things. But all of these things are not there. And that is why I always say, in theory, these are how we are supposed to structure our political system, especially to provide a good sense of belonging to the people at the grassroots. But in actual practice, these things don't.
It seems like the issue now is having sincerity of our representatives.
Absolutely.
Everything is already there. We have the mind to meet with our representatives, but they are never there. And it seems like they are too far and we cannot have them come around. But you've talked about the legislature and you said you don't want to talk about their constituency projects, but we'll have to talk about that a little bit, if that's fine, right? In the three arms of government, the legislative, they seem to be our direct representatives, but they are not. We see this happen in other countries where people can call their MPs and all that. Is that system even there? Let's know whether if it's the case of it's not functioning or it's not being respected, but do we have that system?
Okay.
That we can go to them, not even they coming or they're holding town halls, that we can approach them.
Okay, let's interrogate this a little bit further.
Okay.
Poverty has been weaponized in our society that it has become so deep that it has affected the way our people think, the way our people present their demands. I will explain this.
Okay.
You talked about the people approaching their representative to talk and what have you. Now, because of this problem of endemic poverty that we have in the system, when these people have an opportunity to meet with their legislature, do you really think they present societal demands to them?
They present personal.
Or they present personal demands? That is another thing.
Yeah.
So even when we try to pick the hammer and be hammering on those elected legislature, but in the actual sense, when the people have an opportunity to sit with their legislature, when the people have an opportunity to visit them, maybe during festive period and what have you, you sit down on their carpet, they sit down on on their chairs as monarchs, and they ask you, what are the problems? People don't really present societal issues. People don't really present communal issues. Instead, people really start talking about personal issues. Oh, my children's school fees, my wife is pregnant, and all of those kind of things. And when the legislature released that 20,000, 50,000, he feels
he has done his constituency job.
Exactly. So that is why in the first place I said I don't like that word constituency project, because it has been abused, and it is something that it is not really what we are making it look like. So if we want to have this conversation, we have to interrogate this further by saying that, okay, if the government are truly serious, that they want to really engage the people, they want people to truly participate in politics and governance, the conversation must start from addressing this problem of poverty.
Okay.
Because when I don't have money in my pocket, when I don't have food in my kitchen, when my children, when the stomach infrastructural part is not properly addressed, I have an opportunity to meet someone who is presenting a kind of a messianic outlook to me that can be able to bail me from my current predicament. I cannot start talking about boreholes in the community. I cannot start talking about roads. I cannot start talking about, the revolutionizing of the agricultural sector. I will first start asking for my problems to be addressed, then all other things can follow.
I will still put that on the shoulder of the legislature, because that's the reason you are there. Talking about sincerity now, so it means that you're taking advantage of the personal plights of these people. And of course, I've gone to my constituency, I've released 1 million around. That should do a lot. Now let's talk about constituency projects. On one hand, we hear people say your reps are not, they are not contractors, they are not supposed to do that, but they have constituency projects, right? So what kind of projects are they supposed to be engaging in their constituencies?
Okay.
Do they do that?
The reason why I told you ab initio that this constituency projecting is not my line of thinking is because I have written extensively on demanding to know what is the rationale for this constituency project that you dish out to this legislature. If you will give me money to go and implement a project in my community, why do we have these statutory agencies? Why do we have the Ministry of Works? Why do we have these people that are constitutionally saddled with the responsibility of handling this kind of project, and you are giving me the money directly and you're calling it constituency allowance to go and do constituency project. So personally, you ask for my personal opinion, that is also another avenue for corrupt practices. You and I, as Nigerians, you will know that this constituency allowance thing do not really go down to the people of the people at the grassroots. It's a big lie. What normally happens is that these monies are used as if it is a personal favor the legislature is doing for his community. For crying out loud, you get money from the federation account in form of, you call it constituency allowance. You go there and you construct borehole, and your boys are busy taking photographs, tagging you on social media, praising you, and even thanking you as if it is something that you remove from your personal pocket.
Your job.
And our people's psyche has been, deliberately crafted to believe that if a legislature goes down to his constituency and embark on any kind of project, be it scholarship, be it maybe renovation of schools, because that is what they do at most. They renovate schools, they dig one borehole, and they make a big noise out of it. So at the end of the day, the people are meant to believe that it is this person's good heart that is actually doing that, not really a constitutional obligation on his neck. We're not knowing that these people get money on a monthly basis to go back to their constituency and implement a project that can at least translate to meaningful development for the people. They don't do that. They give you an impression. In fact, when they sit down with their constituents, when they sit down with their boys, when they sit down with those people, they lie to them. They make them believe, oh, there is no money now. They have not given us any more, but I will try to get money to do this for the community and what have you. And that is why when you hear the narratives, it's really appalling. And sometimes you will think as if we are at the mercy of these politicians. It's just what they decide to do is what they when what they decide not to do, they will not do them.
So I think from what you've just said now, information is key. The people need to be sensitized to know that this is the role of these our legislatures. This is not your so you should demand that they do it in any little form that you can. And from what you've said now, in essence, the system seems to be there. What we need to work on is sort of an ideological reform so that we change the way we see and the way we approach things generally. Before we let you go, any final words for us?
Okay, yes, you talked about ideological reforms. It piqued my attention. Before you advocate for ideological reform, there must be sincerity of heart and purpose. If you are talking about ideological reforms, it must come from an angle of sincerity. Are you really sincere about reforming the status quo? Yes, you said information is power, people should be informed or whatever. But I will also tell you, maybe as a radical, that the information system has been deliberately blocked in such a way that people do not even know their constitutional rights and their constitutional obligations. And it's deliberate. Just like they deliberately weaponize poverty, they also deliberately gag this information system whereby people are not aware. And when people are not aware, they feed on people's ignorance. When people are ignorant about some of these rights, so it becomes easier for propaganda to flourish. It becomes easier for falsehood to always go down to the public domain and start saying, oh, this person is like us because he has constructed borehole, but it's not from me. So if I can have any final word, I will say I'm advocating more for sincerity, honesty.
On whose part?
Less on the part of the leaders.
The leaders.
Please, there should be less of hypocrisy. There should be, if you truly you want to do any kind of project, if truly you want to implement any kind of policy, please address that from the angle of I really want to address a need rather than I want to win election in 2027. Most of the project I get was how I can be able to win election. You ask, you are busy constructing flyovers in a society that people are really struggling to eat. In a society where the poverty indices is really very low. in a society where unemployment rate is always on the increase.
That's the one we can see.
And you want to construct this flyover so that it will be very good for the media. People can take pictures and say, oh, this person is doing. So the sincerity is what I'm mostly advocating for.
All right, thank you so much for being here. And then when we talked about information, we're hoping that that is what we can do here to try to break the status quo and give you all the information so you know all your rights and all your plights. That's all we can take on this episode of Viewer Exclusive. Until I come your way again, I am Chinon Supam. Do take care.